When literature and ideology get jammed, you get poetry slammed. Hello, something guys and gals, for another edition of Poetry Slammed. Since I just got my heels hot on some transgender crossdressers the likes of Justin Dennis, I figured I'd continue that bell curve with Neno Grae's Thoughts from the Gynecologists Office, letting us know the horrible first world oppression of being misgendered when you need your snatch checked on. As with my previous two episodes, I will go through the pieces of this poem in response format, like I do with basically everything else, and rate it based on its message/context, structure/verses, transparency, and rhythm. And for the fuck of it, a shrillometer, whether they are calm yet deceptive like Anita Sarkeesian, or as loud and abrasive as Yale students yelling at their dean about how offended they are that someone would disagree with them about offensive Halloween costumes. As always, an overall score will be given, but don't count on most if not any of these poems to get a 7 for me. This is Poetry Slammed after all, not Poetry Sham. Take it away, Neno.
And here, I am never just a person.
Well, I know two problems with this poem already. Well, I get this is in the perspective of the Gynecologist's Office. When you say "in here," it makes it extremely vague. Are you in the waiting room, or are you actually set up on the recliner? Also, an office isn't a place for you to feel special. They are there to make sure your Venus flytrap doesn't have one too many flies caught in it.
Always a boy, always a girl, always sir or ma'am or it.
Okay, for one thing, a gynecologist doesn't check on a man's genitals, so they are there under the presumption you are a girl. And secondly, if you feel as though they misgendered you, even though you're going to a gynecologist's office, which would require you to have a vagina, which most women have, you can politely correct them, but don't expect them to abide by it. This silent war you have with yourself is all you're doing.
Always an object or a thing. Nothing more than the speculum or the stirrups.
Well, they are treating your vagina like as if it's a thing, not you entirely. Think of it like a car mechanic working on the transmission. Oops, sorry. Should I pronounce it cismission, since I'm not transgender? Your vagina is only one sum of the whole. It doesn't have some kind of self-awareness.
And then they call me back from this waiting room, and I swear my heart never beat this fast.
Well, now we know where we are relative in the gynecologist's office, but I'm going to point this out since it seems like it is going to be the main argument against this poem. All of this paranoid delusion that our speaker holds about the office is all entirely in her head. She doesn't have any real reason to be afraid, unless they find out she's actually not female. She thinks misgendering is the worst thing to come to her. And imagine that as the worst thing you ever have to experience in the first world. African kids in Uganda have to suffer mass starvation and malaria, and some of them get routed as child soldiers. But oh, Neno, clearly you are the one that has it worst out of anyone.
But there's something about the smell of alcohol and the sight of white tile that always makes me a little queasy.
I can't imagine how disoriented you'd be if you ever came across a frat party or walked into a ballroom then.
And maybe it's the fear of always thinking that I'll be cut open. Always be dissected on a table like a frog.
You clearly don't know what goes on in a gynecologist's office then, unless your vagina is sewed in. And wouldn't that be a surprise considering how unfucked you've been? The doctors aren't there to unbutton your VNeck shirt like you think. Although, then again, maybe she's talking about transitioning to be female?
I'm always worried about having my legs spread because everyone else is always worried about what's in between them.
Well, sorry to break the eggs on your sob story, but doctors aren't there to judge how tight or wet your pussy is. They need you to spread the legs so they can get the best judgment on whether your vagina is healthy or not. If it makes you so uncomfortable, then don't go. But I know you will, because one day some cucked beta male will unload in your bologna sandwich some syphilis, and you will need a checkup.
And there isn't even a paper sheet in the real world.
What? You mean to tell me that? No joke! Doctors hold medical records of patients? Wowie zowie wowie! I'm fucking enlightened beyond all measure.
And here, there's no such thing as permanence. How can there be when your name and pronouns just disappear from the chart?
Again, if this is a gynecologist's office, the pronoun of the person is irrelevant, as they are all assuming you are female based on the vagina, but I highly doubt that your name would fucking disappear, because who knows if you need another checkup at the same place, and who knows if you contract the same diseases over and over, either by fate, or you just being so promiscuous that you need a hot dog wedged between your hot buns every goddamn fucking night.
I swear I should start wearing a name tag every time I visit. Or I should start wearing a collar when I go out in public. Like a dog.
And all this, mind you, is out of the hysterical, feeble-minded delusions of Neno, who thinks that getting your axe wound inspected is as equivalent to getting the yellow star as a Jew. You know that I have a fear of amputees, not necessarily the person, but the idea of being amputated, to lose a part of myself. But guess what? I don't think that stems from some great societal oppression bringing me down, and I'm aware that that alone is my fear and doesn't sisslate to everyone else's.
Except when people misgender a dog, they apologize and correct themselves and...
Okay, a dog doesn't even have a concept of gender, so to say that you are analogous to a dog is fucking retarded, and secondly, it is your duty to correct them because not anyone in this world can read your fucking mind and feelings, so I highly doubt that this scenario even happened, but cheer on, crowd, like she overcame some kind of trial.
Here comes the white coat!
Was that a reference to Paul Revere, or are you subtly being racist too?
Here comes the person to stare at the cervix, collect samples like this body is a rotting house.
Oh my fucking god. They're collecting samples to ensure that your coin slot isn't rotting, bitch! Also, didn't you fucking pay to make an appointment? Did you just buy an appointment to a gynecologist's office for yucks, waltzing in like as if you didn't even know what goes on in the process? I imagine this scenario would be even more hilarious if you were someone who paid someone to do a porno shoot and then find yourself shocked when they ask that you have to perform the wobbly H.
Have to see if it needs to be condemned.
Your ideology needs to be condemned. Also, no clapping, that's too triggering.
Have to see if its insides are viable. Have to crack open the walls just to see what label we should put on it.
Okay, Mrs. Grae, you are suffering from hepatitis C, gonorrhea, and have crabs. What do you want to do about it? Ugh! I can't believe you would mislabel my vagina without my consent, transgynist!
And I just don't want my legs to be spread anymore.
Don't go to the office then!
I just don't want to be splayed out on some tray for the whole world to see.
Oh, look at that faked emotional plea from Neno, wanting her cake and eating it too. I want to make sure that my vagina is fine, but I don't want to spread my legs so that the doctors can accurately tell me if my vagina is fine. Also, the doctors aren't going to take pictures of your sideways smile and share it on Instagram.
With my feet pinned down. You know, when they did that to a cis person, they called it a crucifixion and gave him a holiday.
You aren't fucking Jesus, you egocentric mongoloid. They need to put your feet down so they don't get kicked in the back of the head if you flinch, which you probably would if you had the opportunity.
And when they murder a trans person, they call it an altercation and forget how to bury the body.
Well, that escalated quickly. Who's murdering the trans people? The fucking gynecologists? And who's calling it an altercation? Those very same people? How do you even know someone killed a trans person because they were trans, or will justify it to themselves that way? This is still all under the idea that getting your lines den checked in is like being sent to the gulag, which I highly fucking doubt.
And I've never laughed at the gynecologist before, but there's something so funny about the idea that Jesus could have been a gender fuck, except there is no room for anything holy here.
Well, if you even believe that Jesus did exist, which I don't, you can make any number of claims and assertions about what Jesus was. He was black, he was a woman, he was a toilet brush, but none of it has any evidence other than you saying it so. Also, science has no place for religion anyway, and your gender fluid bullshit is neither holy nor sinful. It just is.
No room for anything holy inside of the blue latex gloves or this little boy pussy.
So you are transgender, and they've had you as a boy pretending to be a girl, yet they still served you like as if you are female. Maybe you have your trans-accepting priorities in the wrong fucking places, perhaps. Maybe you should stop expecting the world to treat you like the privacy of your own home. I'm not saying that gynecology doesn't have some uncomfortable moments, but to say that it's an invasion on you even being a person or that it's like you are being crucified is hyperbolic nonsense painted as a struggle against trans bigotry.
And I just don't want my legs to be open right now.
Then don't go to the fucking office! But hey, if you're fine contracting a number of venereal diseases and having your queef bleeding profusely, that's fine with me. But don't expect me to feel sorry that you've consented to the procedure in the first fucking place and crying foul after the fact.
Or ever again. Maybe that's just a fancy way of saying, I don't want to be vulnerable, but who wants to be vulnerable when it means that something is going to open up inside of you and it's going to hurt? And the whole world can see it's just a little boy pussy.
Once again, doctors aren't recording your meat curtains flaps on Times Square for fuck's sake. You could, in fact, get a doctor fired if you were to do that. But I'm arguing against a position of lunacy, where someone will ever let their devil's kiss shrivel and attract as much bacteria as possible over a slightly awkward and embarrassing moment.
Nothing boy about it, according to the white coat.
Damn those fucking white coats. We should have gotten some black coats up in there. They could tell you all about the wonderful things they do to your boy pussy. And hey, maybe you were going to the wrong office perhaps?
And something is going to open up inside of you, and you can't run away from it.
What the fuck is this thing you're talking about? Are you talking about growing a dick? That would be an odd thing for someone that looks like they're in their mid-20s to experience, especially after transitioning, no less.
And when they quietly call you your dead name on the way out, you're not going to be. You're just going to wish you were.
Oh, hurrah, hurrah. I'm just tearing up on the inside over poor Neno's struggle. But might I ask, didn't you say before that your name just disappears in the office? Yet they call you by your name and that it being dead still warrants its existence in the first place? Oh wait, that's right. You had your handy-dandy name tag and dog card to avoid that. Avoid all that non-traversy you might experience at some point, when it's all just fucking superstition. So that was Neno Grae's thankfully short exercise in melodrama, and like with most of these poems on here, has no flow, rhythm, or structure of any note. While I get that some poems have free verse forms, this poem is literally all over the place, not even consistent on one thing or the other, so let's rate it. For message/context, I give it a 1. Neno absolutely relies on inflating the problem of going to the Gynecologist's Office to absurd levels, at one point comparing herself to Jesus Christ being crucified. I was desperately waiting for the moment that Neno would tell us what actually went on in the office, instead of making hyperbolic claims about it, but that never came to fruition, so for that, it deserves its paltry rating. For structure/verses, I also give it a 1. Again, like with most of these poems, they fail on standardizing a form or meter of any note. Neno sometimes repeats certain phrases like and here and always, but I think that was more incidental than intentional. Not to mention the bouts where she got unusually quiet for an emotional low point in the poem, when it wasn't in prior poems. For transparency, I give it a 5. You might think that I'm rating that awfully high, given that our transgender here is paranoid to oblivion, but I think that paranoia itself is telling of not only the massive amounts of privilege she has, yes, I am using that in the proper context, but of how any SJW trite can take the most innocuous day-to-day life experience and make it seem like some kind of great injustice, as with Neno Grae. Not to say that she should exercise her paranoia, but it is a good character judgment for future poems, if any. And for rhythm, I give it a 1. Again, as with the structure, Neno occasionally goes the empowered feminist volume when she's got the crowd booming for her, not that they wouldn't boom for her anyway, and then does barely audible whispers about not wanting to be checked up on. There's never a proper flow between the out-of-breath moments, the fast-paced moments, and the slower moments, making the poem sound just like another feminist ranting and raving. That puts the average score to a solid 2. I give her a 1 on the Shrillometer, making her the equivalent of this pseudo-intellectual games critic going,
everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
That's all, folks. Tune in for another episode of Superficial Scribblings on Sexism.